70s plus a military marriage plus Northwest accompanying the army plus raising children plus marriage before love plus true and false daughters. Anxin opened her eyes and dressed as a fake daughter from a wealthy family. Xia Cuicui, the real daughter who had been reborn and returned, came to her door and directly married her to the Northwest. Not only that, but also raising 3 children. Reborn for a lifetime, Xia Cuicui regained her life and successfully married into a wealthy family. But the result made her suffer unbearably. The wealthy husband had illegitimate children, and the family feud was also severe, competing openly and secretly for family property. But she didn't regret it, because the place where Anxin married was like hell to her. Unexpectedly, Tianjin Anxin married to the Northwest and successfully became a military sister-in-law. At the age of 19, she was lively and cheerful, and at 30, he was cold-faced and soft-hearted, creating a different spark. One day in the future, when we met again, the cold and ruthless man appeared in front of Xia Cuicui with a smile on his face, holding Anxin's hand. Stinky man, who said they didn't want children back then? Chapter 1, Wear It Right, Why Wear It as a Fake Daughter? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Anxin had just woken up, feeling dizzy and dizzy. Before she could react, she heard the sound of a woman crying and smashing things downstairs. I'll tell you, Angie, our biological daughter has just been found, and I don't care if she's going to marry any battalion commander or not. That's in the Northwest mountainous area. Anxin dragged her heavy footsteps to open the door, looked over, and saw a middle-aged couple in their 40s. The man stood by the window smoking, his eyebrows furrowed, and the woman sat on the sofa, sobbing incessantly. Who are they? Isn't she already dead? Thinking of this, her mind exploded like something. She traveled through time, but still arrived in the 1970s when there was nothing to ask for. But the good news is that she wore it to a relatively wealthy family, but as her memory gradually became clearer, she discovered bad news that her identity as a wealthy housewife was actually fake. 7 days ago, Zhen Qianjin found the door and completely disrupted her life. Originally, 2 months later was the original owner's birthday, which was her engagement day. As she was about to marry into a wealthy family, a true heiress suddenly appeared, intending to kick her out. The original owner was so angry that he wished he could swallow his true daughter alive. At first, the An family planned to keep both of them, and their 3 generations of business were not unaffordable. After all, their daughter, who had been raised for more than a decade, was always emotionally connected. But who knew that the wealthy rural parents had also arranged a marriage for her, or it was a military marriage, and it couldn't be pushed away. It used to be a good thing to marry into the military, but when she heard that the other party was in the Northwest mountainous area, Anne's mother was unhappy. The daughter she had finally found was about to compensate her, but now she has to marry into the mountainous area, which is extremely painful. But this can be considered as destroying military marriages. It's not just for fun at this moment. After much thought, I decided to let the original owner marry me. Although they were all cut meat, one was from the thigh and the other was from the heart, it was still the heart meat that was finally found. After the original owner learned about this matter, they started a commotion and even jumped into the water. Fortunately, they were rescued, but the news still spread widely. Hey, give me a rocket at the beginning. What is that? Anxin sighed, wanting to report on reincarnation to the king of hell, but unwilling to face this bloody beginning. I finally went public with my own company, but in order to save a boy, it ended up like this. Regret surged in her heart, and she almost fainted again. However, upon hearing what her mother had said downstairs, she knew that she couldn't escape and could only choose to face it. So Anxin dragged her heavy footsteps downstairs and said, "You two, don't argue anymore." The living room instantly quieted down. Yan, are you awake? Just woke up when you were smashing something just now. Anxin's words made Zhao Qiufang's expression flash with nervousness. You don't have to argue anymore. I promise you'll marry to the Northwest. Upon hearing these words, the couple felt a hint of guilt in their hearts. Especially Angel, looking at the fake cotton jacket he had been wearing for over a decade, almost said, "I disagree. But thinking of my biological daughter, I still didn't speak up. Yen, Dad won't treat you unfairly. Even the dowry you deserve won't be reduced. Just forget about the dowry. If you feel sorry for me, exchange it all for money and bring it over to me. And Yen doesn't want to trouble, it's the Northwest and she still needs to take a train there. Why bring so much dowry? It's more practical to ask for some money." Anxia was clearly stunned for a moment and thought, "Qiufang, go and get 800 yuan to give to Yen. Yen, come back to find your dad when you have difficulties." And Yen knew it was a polite remark, but she still nodded. "Okay, I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable, Dad. Can you help me buy a train ticket to the Northwest? I'll go over tomorrow so that my sister can also return home early." After hearing this, the couple's expression became even more guilty. Zhao Qiufang said with a tearful tone, Yen, don't blame your parents. If you blame your biological parents, we have no choice but to arrange a military marriage for you." And Yen cooperated and replied, "Mom, I understand everything, I don't blame you." Returning to the room, Yen glanced at it and felt no attachment in her heart. She found her suitcase and began to pack up her things. Early the next morning, when Anxin went downstairs, she found an extra person in the living room. Seeing her thin and weak appearance, she guessed the other person's identity. The family sat together for breakfast, but no one spoke at the table. It wasn't until Anxin got into the car that the An family finally regained consciousness. "How did all of this suddenly become smooth? But now why do you suddenly feel a bit reluctant? Mom and Dad, shouldn't I come back? How about I marry off to the Northwest and let Yen come back?" Xia Cuicui saw her parents waving at the distant train and looked up with red eyes. "Cuicui, don't talk nonsense. Mom finally found you. You are our biological daughter. Yen has grown up, she just returned to her original life. We can't take care of her for a lifetime, can we?" And Yen sat on the train, looking at the information written on the paper in her hand, with a name written on it, Lin Yu, and the rest was the name of the location of the troops. She suddenly had a big head, at least give herself a photo. Can't this man be so ugly? And Yan's heart tightened. At the age of 30, he was still a battalion commander and didn't get married. It was likely due to 3 reasons: ugly appearance, bad temper, and poor health. She has also read many time travel novels, but 99.9% of them are all about finding a super talented husband. Is she just that 0.01%? Oh my goodness, at least I only wear it to save people. Can you give me some way to survive? The train clattered for 2.5 days before reaching the Northwest. Along the way, she also had thoughts of getting off the train, but those thoughts were rejected when she thought it was a military wedding. Getting off the car, Yen tightly wrapped her clothes around her body. It was only a month before spring arrived, and the mountains in the Northwest were still covered in white snow. After asking the staff at the train station, they found out that Lin Yu's army was located halfway up the mountain, which was a military district and could only be accessed by military vehicles. The road up the mountain was very bumpy, almost causing Yen to vomit and escape. Along the way, not to mention the house, Yen didn't even see anyone and was filled with lifeless yellow soil. "Comrade, we're here." After a piercing brake sound, the young soldier driving came over and lowered the rear bumper of the car. Yen, who got off the car, looked at the military base in front of her. These conditions compared to the previous family, it's really a bit inferior. A pretty girl suddenly appeared at the station, attracting the attention of many passing soldiers. "Hello, comrade." At this moment, Yen saw a soldier carrying a gun walking towards her and quickly shouted out. The person bowed to Yen and said, "Hello. I would like to ask, where is Captain Lin Yulin?" "Captain Lin. He should be leading the team into the mountain now. Is there anything you're looking for him for? The person looked at Anxin in front of them. Are you Captain Lin's sister? Looking at her young age, I instinctively asked again. Anxin did not conceal anything and truthfully said, no, I am his object. But when she said this, her tone was still a bit unnatural. Before crossing the river, she didn't even talk about getting married, she only had a romantic relationship once in college. The person's expression clearly carried a hint of disbelief. So it's my sister-in-law. How about I take you to Captain Lin's house first, and tell him the news of your arrival as soon as I see him? After some thought, Anxin could only do this. The military compound is located to the north of the base, and at first glance, there are many households, but all of them are bungalows. Lin Yu's house is on the far right side of a row of bungalows. Anxin glanced and said, is this her future home? Who are you looking for? At this moment, a woman in military uniform walked out of the room. Anxin looked over and saw that the woman was about 25 to 6 years old, which was the most beautiful time in life. She had a tall figure, and although her skin was not white, she was very healthy. Paired with military uniform, she looked even more handsome. At this moment, she is holding a 3-year-old girl in her arms. Chapter 2, Why Does He Have Children? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Dr. Zhu, you're also here. This is Captain Lin's family. They just arrived today and Captain Lin went up the mountain. I brought her over first. The soldiers who came together put down their luggage and hurried back. Family members? His niece? Zhu Yan looked at Anxin curiously and asked. Lu Yuanchao's expression was a bit off. I don't know how to say it. Who in this station didn't know that Dr. Zhu was interested in Captain Lin, and now suddenly a target appeared? Anxin shook her head and said, I'm not his niece, I'm his betrothed in his hometown. This time, my family arranged to come and marry him. Zhu Yanming was taken aback for a moment. She didn't even think in the direction of the object. Mainly because Anxin looks too small, at most just an adult. Zhu Yan put down the little girl in her hand and walked up to Anxin, silently comparing herself to her in her heart. Object? Why haven't I heard of him having an object in his hometown? Anxin stood still, feeling uncomfortable being stared at by Zhu Yan. Who the hell is this woman? How annoying. It's not shameful to care about other men even though I am Lin Yu's object and have children. Anxin frowned and said, Dr. Zhu is just Lin Yu's comrade in arms, and many things are not known to be normal. Zhu Yan's face changed, and she didn't expect the girl to be quite articulate. I've known Lin Yu since he enlisted, and he has only returned to his hometown twice in so many years. I know him better than you. Anxin was also a bit annoyed. What does Dr. Zhu mean? Doubt my identity? Then when Lin Yu comes back, you can personally ask him if he has this marriage in his hometown. If he says no, I will immediately turn around and leave. I am still curious about this marriage. Humph. Upon hearing these words, Zhu Yan's face turned green. Anxin doesn't care about so much. She was already exhausted all the way and walked towards the house with her legs raised. She actually hoped that Lin Yu wouldn't recognize her, so she wouldn't regret her marriage. In this way, she can fly freely, with a mind from the future, afraid that she won't survive in the 77 years of business opportunities everywhere. When passing by Zhu Yan, Anxin didn't pay any attention to the other person's desire to gouge out her own gaze. The room is not big, but everything is complete. Anxin took a brief glance and found that there were 3 bedrooms, and her mind settled a bit. As soon as she sat down, the little girl that Zhu Yan was holding in her arms ran over and grabbed her clothes. Her big eyes were full of curiosity. The cute appearance made Anxin couldn't help but reach out and pinch her face. Seeing that Zhu Yan at the door didn't see it, she took out a big white rabbit's milk candy from her pocket and handed it to the little girl. What's your name? Lin Nuanyuan. Nuanyuan. I didn't expect this woman to be quite good at naming her child. It's so cute, is sugar delicious? After finishing, I still have it. Lin Nuanyuan's milky voice made Anyan's heart almost cute. Delicious, thank you, sister. With Lin Nuanyuan accompanying her, Anyan didn't feel so bored either. She just sat there waiting for Lin Yu to come back. After about an hour, Anyan heard the sound of the courtyard door being opened, followed by a deep yet magnetic sound. You worked hard today, how warm are you? It's inside the house. At the moment the door was pushed open, Anyan instinctively looked up and froze on the spot. This is completely different from what I thought in the car. The word, ugly, seems to have nothing to do with the person in front of me. Jianmei Xingmu, with delicate features that resemble sculptures, looks like a person walking out of a painting. Handsome. This is the only adjective that Anyan can think of. Although I have seen many handsome guys in my previous life, compared to the person in front of me, what kind of national husband, Korean Oba, are they all weak and explosive? As for her poor health, it couldn't be further affected. The person in front of her looked almost 1.9 meters tall, and her long legs seemed to be longer than her life. Her robust figure was perfectly displayed in front of Anyan, unaffected by the heavy military coat he was wearing. Feeling Anyan's gaze, the man lifted his eyes and glanced, just in line with Anyan's gaze. Is he Lin Yu? Who are you? Dad. Before Anyan could speak, Lin Nuanyuan ran over behind her. The man's already dull face instantly changed into a smiling face. Nuanyuan, are you good today? Dad? Isn't this person the object of Zhu Yan? Thinking of the other person's identity, Anyan immediately withdrew her gaze and blushed. The other person was married and almost thought he was Lin Yu. It was too embarrassing. Hello, comrade. My name is Anyan and I am the target of Captain Lin Yulin. Anyan regained her composure and felt a bit embarrassed when she thought about her previous performance. Anyan, said the man, making his expression somewhat strange. That tone seemed to be pondering something. Outside the door, Zhu Yan also followed in. Just as she heard Anyan's words, she sneered, you are really lying when you open your eyes. How long are you planning to deceive others? Liar. Who did I lie to? Anyan immediately retorted upon hearing Zhu Yan's words. This woman had been against her since we met just now, and now that her man has come, she still needs to confront herself. Zhu Yan shook her head and said, you said you were the object of Lin Yu's hometown, but you didn't even recognize him standing in front of you now. It's not a lie, what is it? Lin Yu? He is really Lin Yu. Why does Lin Nuanyuan call him father? Why do his biological parents still want Xia Cuicui to marry to the northwest when he is already married? Chapter 3, Not Married Yet, Happy to Bring Up 3 Children. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. For a moment, Anyan felt that her mind couldn't turn around. Are you from Uncle Xia's family? No, I remember his daughter's name is Xia Cuicui. Upon hearing Zhu Yan's words, Lin Yu remembered something and asked. I'm not Xia Cuicui, but I'm the biological daughter of Uncle Xia that you call me. Lin Yu nodded without much change in expression. My name is Lin Yu, and I am the commander of the 1st Battalion here. The marriage was originally arranged by the elders of 2 families. You were originally promised to my younger brother, but later my younger brother was with another girl and had a child, which is why he promised you to me. Anyan listened to Lin Yu's words and couldn't express any pain in her heart. This is too cruel, isn't it? But what else can be done now? How old are you this year? 18, it's almost 19. Under 19. I'm 30 years old this year. Are you sure you've come over and made up your mind? If you're not willing, I can take you back. If she had heard this before coming, she would have been overjoyed, but when she heard Lin Yu say so, she hesitated and went back. Where are you going? Both adoptive parents and biological parents are like strangers to themselves. At least the man in front of me looks more sincere and responsible than them, so staying may be a better choice. Before Anxin could recover from her previous sentence, Lin Yu spoke again. There's one more thing I want to tell you. I have 3 children. After hearing these words, Anxin's Libra seemed to tilt slightly in her heart. So, are you a second marriage? No, I haven't been married before. These 3 children are not my biological ones, they are my younger brothers. They had an accident and the family adopted the children under my name. Anxin breathed a sigh of relief. It's not just a second marriage. Oh, I know now, so if I stay, will Nuanyuan call my mom in the future? Thinking of the scene where Lin Nuanyuan called her sister just now, Anxin wanted to laugh, and the relationship became too fast. Think about it for a moment, don't rush to agree. There's one more thing I want to make clear to you. I don't plan to have children in the future, the 3 of them are my biological children. Anxin doesn't care about this, she's even a bit happy and painless as a mother. That would be the best. Anxin nodded happily and said, don't worry, if I choose to stay, I will treat the 3 children as my own. Lin Yu glanced at Anxin and didn't expect her to agree so happily. I don't have any other requirements for you, as long as you treat your 3 children well, it's enough. As for everything else, it's up to me. When you think about marriage, you can ask me any requirements you have. Anxin nodded again and said, let's handle the wedding according to your wishes. You don't have to consider or worry about them in your hometown. After a moment of silence, Lin Yu had no objections. He pointed inside the house and said, there are 3 rooms at home, the one in the middle is mine, the one on the right is Xiaozhe and Xiaozhua's, and the one on the left is Warm. Anxin came suddenly, and Lin Yu didn't prepare anything at all. Xiaozhe. Xiaozhua. Lin Hongzhe and Lin Hongzhua, they are currently attending classes at school. Anxin exclaimed, by name, it should be 2 boys. She couldn't help but pray in her heart, hoping that they would be as obedient as Nuanyuan. You can temporarily share a room with Nuanyuan. If you want to live alone, I'll have 2 kids squeeze in with me and let me know what you need. I'll prepare it for you. No need, I think it's pretty good. I'll just stay with Nuanyuan. The 2 of us have feelings now. Anxin said and kissed that cute little face. She wanted to kiss just now, but because Nuan is Zhu Yan's daughter, she hasn't moved her lips. It's different now. This is her own daughter, so of course she needs to give it a good kiss. Lin Nuanyuan also hugged Anxin, with a mother-daughter affectionate expression. Lin Yu nodded slightly and said, I still have to go to the Youth League headquarters. I'll come back to pick you up at the cafeteria when we have dinner tonight. Anxin nodded and said, you don't have to worry about us. Go get busy, Nuanyuan. Say goodbye to your father. The little girl waved at Lin Yu like Anxin and said in a milky voice, Dad, goodbye. Lin Yu took a deep look at Anxin, didn't say anything, and turned around and strode away. Zhu Yan couldn't resist seeing Lin Yu leave anymore, and her voice became extremely cold. My surname isn't, I tell you, I don't care where you come from. Don't think about getting married. Anxin didn't cause any trouble this time. Zhu Yan's ability to help Lin Yu take care of the child has already explained her feelings for Lin Yu. Anxin didn't want to do anything that would make her look too teasing, but upon closer examination, Zhu Yan must have taken care of the child for a long time, and there must be a reason why Lin Yu didn't choose her. Watching her angry back leave, Anxin sighed and turned to look at Lin Nuanyuan. Nuanyuan, say goodbye to your Aunt Zhu. Goodbye, Aunt Zhu. She turned around and hugged Lin Nuanyuan back home. The Warm room is not very big, it is the smallest of the 3 rooms, with the bed against the wall and a wooden railing blocking it. This man has quite skillful hands. Anxin touched the wooden railing, her mind recalling the face she had just seen, and her face blushed unconsciously. Sister, I still want to eat candy. Nuanyuan, you can't call me sister in the future. What are you shouting? Shout. Mom. The word mother is unfamiliar to Lin Nuanyuan, and equally unfamiliar to Anxin. She has traveled to this world and everything is in such a hurry. The transformation around her is in a hurry, and getting married is in a hurry. Now, being a mother is all in such a hurry. Seeing that the little girl didn't shout, Anxin picked her up and said, "Forget it, just shout whatever you think of me." She opened the box and took out a plush rabbit to give to Lin Nuanyuan. The little girl happily sat on the bench and started playing. This is the original owner's favorite toy. When packing up, I accidentally put it in the box, but now it has come in handy. Lin Nuanyuan didn't make a fuss, and she also freed up her hands to start packing up her clothes. The box was full of clothes bought by the original owner, colorful and colorful. He glanced at the room and saw where the cabinet was for her to put these high-end clothes. Anxin remembers walking around the room just now and seeing a wardrobe in Lin Yu's room. She picked up her clothes and went to the next room. The room is the same as the next one, simple but tidy. There is a bed stacked like tofu blocks on the bed, and everything on the desk is so neat. This man doesn't have OCD, does he? Anxin murmured and opened the wardrobe. She was even more certain of her previous thoughts. All the clothes in the wardrobe were neatly stacked in different styles. The goosebumps have all gone up. Anxin carefully picked up Lin Yu's clothes and put them aside, hanging her own clothes. Suddenly, the monotonous wardrobe seemed to welcome spring. At the same time, when settling down, Xia Cuicui looked at her biological parents in front of her, her hatred twisted in her heart. Chapter 4, Anxin's Secret. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Zhao Qiufang glanced at the calendar and sighed, "I don't know if Yan has gone to the northwest. Anxia, do you think she might not be used to it?" Anxia's face also showed a hint of debt. After all, he has been wholeheartedly nurturing for over a decade. "Dad, Mom, why don't I go change my sister and come back? I've been living a tough life in the countryside and I'm sure I can better adapt to that kind of life than my sister." Xia Cuicui sat on the sofa, with red eyes and a face full of guilt. Xin, you're not allowed to say these things. Mom just casually said it earlier." The couple took Xia Cuicui home and changed her name the next day. Her current name is Anxin. "But, Mom. Xin, don't take your sister's affairs to heart. What you need to do now is to read the book well and learn some basic etiquette. The Hua family is not an ordinary family." Zhao Qiufang interrupted Anxin's words. Anxin breathed a sigh of relief. Of course, she didn't want to trade with Anxin. She had been living such a good life for over a decade, and the reason she said this was to make the parents in front of her feel guilty. Thinking of this, Anxin's eyes changed, filled with resentment. Anxin, don't blame me. If you want to blame me, blame your biological parents. If it weren't for their mistake, I would have lived like that. In my previous life, I only knew my background before I died. I still remember the way you mocked me back then, and now it's finally your turn. Marrying that man who keeps a straight face all day is like being a widow, and those 3 children are not fuel-efficient lamps. You should enjoy them well. I hope you can make me happy next time we meet." Anxin shivered and tightened her tight-fitting clothes. "Did you catch a cold?" I touched my forehead and found that there was no perm before starting to put things away again. After packing up her clothes, Anxin glanced at another small box, which was her treasure, a box of books, many of which were from high school. Anxin had planned to take the exam after the resumption of the college entrance examination next year. Arranged the books neatly on Lin Yu's desk, ready to get used to this era and the life here before starting learning. When I returned to the next room, I found that Lin Nuanyuan had already fallen asleep holding that plush toy, and her side face looked a bit like Lin Yu. Anxin took advantage of this moment to sit there and start planning her future life. Firstly, and most importantly, take good care of the 3 children and scientifically raise them using future parenting methods. Although she has never had a child, she can't help but be frequently mentioned in her ear. Secondly, it is important to study hard and participate in next year's college entrance examination. Regardless of the era, knowledge is the power. Thirdly. Anxin's face turned red. Since she chose to stay, she definitely wanted to live a good life, so she wanted to cultivate a good relationship with Lin Yu, preferably starting from dating. She swore that she was definitely not motivated by her appearance, it was just that Lin Yu looked too tasteful and was too in her aesthetic sense. Sikhun is always the best way to pass the time. Unconsciously, the sun has set and smoke is rising from the courtyard cooking. The outside is filled with the fragrance of various dishes. Sister, I'm hungry. Nuanyuan, your dad said he'll come back and take us to the cafeteria to eat. How about waiting for him a little longer? Anxin looked out at the already dark sky, and her impression of Lin Yu decreased by 10 points. What's wrong with this man? I don't know if the child will be hungry even after this point. And those two kids haven't come back, is that how he cares about his children? 10 more minutes have passed. Anxin couldn't sit still and got up to walk towards the kitchen. After flipping through it for a while, she found something good, half a bag of flour and a small piece of pork belly. Judging from its freshness, it should be today's, but what surprised her even more was a handful of vegetables, 2 eggs, and 3 carrots. Pour water and knead the noodles, roll out the noodles and cut them into pieces. In no time, the small half bag of flour was turned into egg-shaped noodles by Anxin. Cut the pork belly and carrots into small pieces and put them into a pot to make them into small pieces. During this time, salt and soy sauce were added to color and season them. She didn't add any MSG, so the warmth was not suitable for eating. Green vegetables are boiled in water. She put another egg into the pot and made a steamed egg for Nuanyuan. After finishing everything, Anxin felt a bit dizzy. She had to ride in the car and vomit again today. She still hasn't dripped in yet, but fortunately, the noodles are ready now. A large bowl of minced meat mixed with noodles, today's carbon water is considered excessive. As soon as the noodles were served, there was movement outside the door. Big brother, it smells so good. Today, Mom Zhu cooked delicious food for us again. Xiaozhua, how many times have I told you to shout Aunt Zhu? Listening to the sound, Anxin couldn't help but say, this man came back at the right time. 2 little boys entered the door first, one with a smile on his face and the other with a cold expression. At first glance, they looked a bit like Lin Yu. Mom Zhu, let's come back. The little boy with a smile on his face looked at Anxin sitting there, wondering, who are you? Why are you at my house? Where is Zhu Mama? Are you Lin Hongzhua? How do you know my name? Who the hell are you? Anxin stood up and said, of course I know your name. Let me introduce myself. My name is Anxin, it's your mother. Lin Hongzhua looked at the woman in front of him who was dressed completely differently, with a face full of disbelief. Dad, who is she? Sorry for coming back late. Lin Yu entered the room and saw 2 bowls of noodles, one big and one small, placed on the table. He apologized and promised to come back and take Anxin to eat. However, he didn't know that the team had a meeting until now. On the way back, it was only then that I remembered Anxin had arrived. It's not too late, I came back just in time. The meal has just been prepared. Lin Yu could hear the strange tone in the girl's words, it was blaming him. Dad, who the hell is she? Seeing that Lin Yu didn't answer him, Lin Hongzhua was a bit angry. Her name is Anxin. I know her name, I just wanted to ask why she said it was my mother. Lin Hongzhua interrupted Lin Yu's words, his volume noticeably increasing. Lin Hongzhua was much calmer than his younger brother, and he was only momentarily stunned by Anxin's words. Seeing Lin Yu stunned and unsure of how to answer, Anxin spoke up and answered his question, because I will marry your father, and of course I will be your mother from now on. No, it's Zhu Mama who's going to marry my dad, not you. I don't want you to be my stepmother. Get out of here. Chapter 5, Small Ambiguity Between Two People. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. At this moment, Lin Hongzhua's face was not the same as when he first entered the room, and his eyes towards Anxin were filled with anger. Lin Hongzhua. Apologize. Lin Yu shouted softly. I'm not wrong again, why should I apologize? I need to go find Mom Zhu. After speaking, Lin Hongzhua turned his head and ran out of the house. I'll go see my younger brother. Lin Hongzhua left a sentence and followed out. Anxin had a headache, and these two kids didn't seem as easy to play with as Nuanyuan. Captain Lin, do you want to go take a look? No need, let's have dinner. Fortunately, Lin Nuanyuan was at home and did not let this meal be too oppressive. After dinner, Anxin washed Lin Nuanyuan and then coaxed the little girl to sleep. When she came out, Lin Yu had already cleaned up the kitchen. How about you go find the two children? After all, this is a mountain, and it would be troublesome if you get lost. Are you not angry? Lin Yu took a puff of smoke and turned around, looking slightly down at Anxin. I'm not angry with a child yet. Besides, I was also wrong. I didn't consider the child's feelings. They don't feel like warmth. Children of this age have their own ideas. Lin Yu's expression was somewhat unexpected. Although I am not very clear about the relationship between Anxin and Xia Cuicui, the first time I saw this girl, I saw that she was dressed differently, which may indicate that she was a lady from a wealthy family. As this place is in a mountainous area, he will definitely not be used to having a temper the day before. Now it seems that this girl not only adapts well, but also understands people very well. A thought flashed in Lin Yu's heart that such a good girl should marry someone who loves her, rather than being a rough guy like himself with 3 children. He decided to find a time to have a good chat with her. Then I'll take a look. As she watched him leave, Anxin wiped the sweat from her palms. This damn nervousness was even more intense than the first time she signed a contract. After a while, Anxin yawned. She had been a bit tired from the journey these past few days. Seeing that Lin Yu had not returned, she got up and went to his room to retrieve her pajamas, ready to wash and change into bed. As soon as he entered the room, Lin Yu walked in with a face on his face. These two kids were almost infuriating him, saying things like, Anxin won't leave and they won't come back. In the room, Anxin had just taken off her clothes when the door was suddenly opened by someone. Anxin let out a cry of surprise and pulled up the blanket at hand to wrap around her body. At the moment the door opened, Lin Yu heard Anxin's exclamation and quickly retreated. The heavy closing of the door also woke up Lin Nuanyuan next door. Lin Yu's deep, slightly panicked voice came from outside the door, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were inside. Anxin's face turned red and her ears turned red. What's this called? On the first day we met, we almost got caught. You, go take a look at Nuanyuan, she's crying so hard. She tried to tell herself not to panic. Okay. Upon hearing the footsteps of Lin Yu leaving, Anxin quickly put on her clothes. A few minutes later, there was no more distress in the next room. When she gathered the courage to walk to the door, she patted her hot face. The original fatigue disappeared without a trace at that moment. Don't be afraid, Anxin. There's nothing to be afraid of, he won't eat you. Anxin whispered to cheer herself on, but the door handle seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds and couldn't be unscrewed. Upon closer inspection, the door was locked from outside at some point. She panicked. This man doesn't have any thoughts about himself, after all, a 30-year-old man is full of vitality. As if hearing the sound of the door opening, the man outside walked over quietly and said, I accidentally locked the door just now. You can open it from inside. Anxin saw the lock on the door, gently twisted it, heard a click, and the door opened. The tall and slender figure, paired with a cold and handsome face and a cold and stern gaze, immediately suppressed Anxin with the military aura, making her gasp for breath. Did Nuanyuan fall asleep? Anxin found that when she traveled, she seemed to have left her courage in the original world, and her heart would occasionally panic. I'm asleep. Lin Yu took out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket and said, do you mind? I don't mind, you can smoke. Lin Yu saw her embarrassment and walked to the dining table, pouring out 2 glasses of water. I thought you were already asleep, he said. Anxin said, I was just about to change clothes and sleep. I didn't mean to change clothes in your room, it was because there was no wardrobe in the warm room. When I packed my luggage in the afternoon, I left my clothes in your wardrobe. Aren't you angry? Angry? Do I look so easily angry? Lin Yu raised his eyebrows lightly. It's just a common problem, but as soon as the man speaks, Anxin feels an inexplicable pressure. No, no. You look, it's easy to talk. Hee, you're the first person to say I'm easy to talk to. Lin Yuduo glanced at the girl, and under the dim light, Anxin exuded a fresh girlish feeling. Exquisite facial features, especially those watery big eyes, seemed to speak. The thought that flashed in his heart when he went out again was, why should he marry such a beautiful girl and ask her to take care of his 3 children? The more Lin Yu thought about it, the more he felt that his demands were a bit excessive. Anxin. On. Anxin instinctively stood up straight, looking up and holding her chest straight. Lin Yu looked at her with a smile and said, you don't have to be so nervous. I just want to say a few words to you. Although I don't know why you agreed to come this far, I want to give you half a month to think carefully. If you want to leave during this half month, please let me know at any time. I won't stop you. If you haven't left for half a month, I will apply for marriage. Lin Yu paused for a moment, thinking of what had just happened, as if worried that she might be afraid. Don't worry, I won't touch you for the next half month. Of course, from now on, if you don't want me to, I won't touch you either. I usually stay at the team headquarters during the day. If I come back late for any tasks, I will inform you in advance. Anxin pondered for a while, seeming to be conflicted about something in her heart. It took her a while to make up her mind, since I'm here, I've already made a decision. Lin Yu nodded thoughtfully and said, this matter mainly depends on you. You don't have to answer in such a hurry, after all, you've only been here for a day. Marriage is a big deal, and there are many things to consider. I'll take care of the warmth tonight, so you can sleep in my room. I've been on the road for a few days, so rest early. That night, Anxin tossed and turned for an unknown amount of time before falling asleep. Her mind was filled with Lin Yu's words and his appearance, and her breath was filled with his scent. In the morning, she was awakened by a wake-up call. She rubbed her hazy sleeping eyes, and this person was so soft that she couldn't lift her spirits. When opening the door, I happened to see Lin Yu coming out of the next room, and Anxin was startled. You wake up so early. Don't sleep too much anymore. He had already changed into a military uniform, which was so pleasing to the eye. Anxin felt that she had suddenly regained her energy. It turned out that looking at a handsome guy can really forget many things. I woke up and got up. I'm sorry I took up your room yesterday, but tonight I'll sleep with Nuanyuan. It's okay, sleeping anywhere is the same for me. At this moment, the horn outside sounded again. Anxin asked curiously, does the station blow the horn every morning? Yes, just now was the meal number, the previous wake-up number. Do you still have a meal date? Anxin was taken aback for a moment. She didn't expect anything. She knew that the military schedule was very strict, but she didn't expect it to be so strict. Everything was arranged clearly for you. Yeah, what's going on? I'm not used to it anymore. No, it's just curiosity. Anxin quickly waved her hand. Luckily she had a fixed schedule every day in her past life, otherwise she really had to adapt to it for a while. Anxin suddenly thought of something, I still have the noodles I made yesterday. How about having noodles for breakfast? When she mentioned it, Lin Yu thought of yesterday's noodles. The taste was much better than that in the cafeteria. Now she has some time to be surprised. This girl not only knows how to cook, but also tastes so good. Okay, I'm not picky about food. After Lin Yu finished speaking, he felt something was not quite right and added, the noodles you ordered taste very good. You go wash up first, the noodles will be ready soon. Thank you very much. Anxin nodded slightly, this damn sense of distance, it's too awkward. In the kitchen, there was a wash basin just in sight. After throwing the noodles into the pot, Anxin straightened her waist and saw Lin Yu washing his face. It turned out that the handsome male lead in the TV drama was not actually portrayed washing his face, but rather, and it's not greasy at all. As if sensing the gaze from the kitchen, Lin Yu suddenly turned his head and looked towards the kitchen. Chapter 6, I am the object of Captain Lin. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Anxin panicked and dodged, but eventually it was too late and she bumped into the man's deep eyes. Ah! In a panic, Anxin accidentally touched the edge of the pot with her hand. When she retrieved it, her back had already been scalded, causing some tingling pain. When he looked up again, Lin Yu had already arrived by her side and said, "What's wrong?" "I accidentally scalded it just now." Lin Yu frowned slightly, took her hand, and walked towards the water pool. The cold water washed over the burnt area, making it cool. However, Anxin's heart was as hot as the sun. "Is it better now?" "Ah, it's a bit better now." Anxin regained her senses and quickly replied. Lin Yu didn't say much, turned around and entered the room. He flipped through it for a while before coming out. When he came out, he had an extra bottle of red liquid in his hand, not knowing what it was. Before Anxin could ask, he grabbed her hand and poured some from the bottle onto the burn area, gently applying it. Looking at Lin Yu's profile, Anxin was tempted. "This medicine was taken by me from the hospital when Xiaozhuo was scalded last time, and it worked very well. Don't worry, it won't leave any scars." "Xiaozhuo? By the way, why didn't the two children come back with you yesterday?" Anxin instinctively asked, but the next second she regretted it. She was really the terminator of the atmosphere. Upon hearing her words, Lin Yu's face turned black. Thinking of what those two kids said yesterday, he became angry and looked at Anxin with an apologetic expression in his eyes. "Don't worry about them, they're fine. You better bring them back. I'll go to school this afternoon." Lin Yu ate a big bowl of noodles before leaving the door. Anxin, like a wife who was giving her husband a ride, took Lin Yu to the gate of the courtyard before returning home. When she returned, Lin Nuanyuan had already woken up and was holding the plush rabbit with her feet resting on the noodle bowl on the table. Seeing Anxin, she bounced over and opened her small hand to embrace her. "Sister, I'm hungry." Anxin smiled and pinched her chubby face. It seemed that the nickname, sister, couldn't be changed in Nuanyuan, but she didn't care either. "Sister, can I give you some noodles and eggs to eat?" "Eat, warm and eat yesterday's eggs." Anxin knew she was referring to last night's steamed egg. "Okay, sister, I'll make it for you now. But when I arrived at the kitchen, I realized that I had run out of eggs." "It's warm, there are no more eggs left. I'll take you to buy some later, sister. How about we have lunch?" The little one thought for a moment and said, "Okay. My home is so warm and sensible." Although Anxin doesn't really like Zhu Yan, she has to admit that she has taken care of Nuanyuan very well. She threw all the leftover noodles from the morning into the pot, big and small enough to eat. During the meal, she even taught the little one how to use chopsticks, but the house was filled with adult chopsticks, which made it very difficult for the little one to use. In the end, she decided to use a spoon. After finishing her meal, Anxin tidied up in the kitchen, keeping an eye on Lin Nuanyuan playing in the yard. Although there were no bad people in the military district, the child was still young and if she fell or something, she wouldn't be able to explain it to Lin Yu at night. "Pack up, the sun is comfortable." Anxin holds Lin Nuanyuan and tells her a story with a book in her hand. Grandma, I want to go find Nuanyuan to play with. Anxin looked up and saw a little boy with a runny nose sticking his head out of the courtyard door. Beside him was a woman standing around 50 years old. The woman glanced into the yard and was clearly taken aback. Usually, when Lin Nuanyuan was at home, Dr. Zhu was there. How could there be a new little girl who looked like a fairy? Erden. Nuanyuan jumped off Anxin and happily ran over, and Anxin followed suit. Are you? The woman asked curiously. Anxin politely greeted, Auntie, hello. My name is Anxin and I am the target of Captain Lin in my hometown. I just came over yesterday. What is the target of Captain Lin? The other party clearly did not expect that the fairy in front of them was Lin Yu's object. Anxin nodded and said, yes, we had an engagement before. My family mentioned this before, so I came over. The women sitting together in the courtyard also leaned over when they heard the sound, and their expressions were the same when they saw Anxin. She just said she's the wife of Captain Lin. Yeah, this girl is too handsome, right? Look at her dress better than the female spies in the movie. After hearing this evaluation, Anxin couldn't help but twitch at the corner of her mouth. This was the first time she had heard someone praise her so much. No wonder when I went to the hospital yesterday, I saw Dr. Zhu's eyes turning red. It turned out that was the case. Sister, can I play with Nuanyuan? The little boy called out sweetly. What's my name, sister? My name is Auntie. I'm sorry, children can't speak. My name is Wang Guilan and I live next door. Anxin shook her head and said, Aunt Wang, it's okay. Nuanyuan also calls me sister, which makes me feel friendly. As she spoke, Anxin took out 2 big white rabbit milk candies from her pocket and handed them to the little one. What's your name? Dan. Erden. Anxin smiled, which really fits the naming convention of this era. Come in, she said. At this moment, the big white rabbit was a very luxurious thing. Wang Guilan took a handful of candy and returned it to Anxin, saying, Lin Yingchang's wife, this thing is too expensive. Let's leave it for Nuanyuan to eat. The sugar was taken away, and Dan clearly lost a lot. Anxin took the sugar and put it in his hand again. Aunt Wang, the most expensive thing is as long as the child is happy, it's just 2 candies. There are still some at home, she said. Wang Guilan looked at Anxin's polite speech, then blinked at her grandson and said, Dan, thank you Aunt and quickly. Thank you, Aunt. Dan is so good. Let's go play with Nuanyuan. Anxin touched the little guy's head and opened the courtyard door. Wang Guilan felt a bit embarrassed and said, Shaoan, you've just arrived. If you need any help, come find Aunt Wang. Then I'll thank Aunt Wang. I really have something I want to ask you. I need to buy something, I don't know where to buy it. Anxin smiled and asked, thinking that Lin Nuanyuan wanted to eat eggs. Buy something, do you see that second floor? Wang Guilan pointed to a 2-story building in the distance and said, that's the supply and marketing cooperative in this location. You can buy some daily necessities, but if you want to buy anything larger, you have to go to the town at the foot of the mountain. There is also a cafeteria in the residence, but if there is a wife at home, men will either come back to eat or bring food over. Eating someone's short mouth, Wang Guilan took Anxin's big white rabbit milk candy and whispered to her, Shaoan, it's not that Aunt Wang is talkative. If Captain Lin doesn't come back to eat, Dr. Zhu will deliver the food in advance. Anxin silently remembered, Aunt Wang, I remember. I'll bring Lin Yu food at noon, but could you please help me keep warm then? Wang Guilan smiled and said, what's so troublesome about this? Usually, the 2 children like to play together. Anxin thanked and found a basket inside the room, walking towards the supply and marketing cooperative. Chapter 7, The Little Storm of Carrying Rice. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The supply and marketing cooperative on the mountain provides limited things every day, and by the time Anxin arrived, many things had already been sold out. The women in the courtyard lined up early to buy fresh vegetables in order to grab them. This supply and marketing cooperative is too tight and in high demand. And business opportunity surged into Anxin's mind. She picked up some leftover vegetables from the shelf, but fortunately, there were some eggs and meat. Without much thought, Anxin threw them all into the basket. I also bought some seasoning and spent a total of 4 yuan and 7 jiao. This price made Anxin couldn't help but sigh for a while. In her past life, the most she could buy was a bottle of drinks for 4 yuan, but now she has bought almost a basket of things. Before returning, she saw that there was actually a big white rabbit milk candy here, but the price was even more expensive than meat. No wonder Wang Guilan had that expression when she saw her giving the second egg milk candy just now. Most people are really reluctant to buy. However, considering that the 3 children at home and the neighbors often have children coming to play, Anxin still bought some. She has a huge investment of 800 yuan. With a small wave of his hand, he bought a big white rabbit for 10 yuan. The staff of the supply and marketing cooperative looked at this unfamiliar and generous face, whispering to each other, all speculating which black sheep this was from. When they returned home, Lin Nuanyuan and Dan were squatting there playing with the mud, their faces covered in mud. They didn't see Wang Guilan's figure, but instead saw the smoke coming from the chimney next door. Thinking of delivering food to Lin Yu at noon, Anxin also started to take action. The earth stove is always good, but it's more troublesome to start a fire than cooking. After starting the fire, Anxin washed and blanched the meat she bought. She then added sugar to the pot and stir-fried it until it turned sugar-colored. As time goes by, the meat juice in the pot becomes thicker and more fragrant. "Anton, what delicious food are you making? It's so fragrant." Erden stood at the kitchen door holding Nuanyuan, sticking his head out and his little nose moving and moving. It was extremely cute, but the sticky nose was a bit comical. "Let's eat Erden at my aunt's house later, right? Is it really possible?" The smell of meat emanating from the kitchen made him swallow several mouthfuls of saliva, unable to move his feet. Looking at the time, Anxin took the rice from the pot and steamed an egg for both children. There were only 2 pots at home, and she could only stir-fry 2 more vegetables when the meat was ready. Dan, Auntie is going to deliver food to your uncle now. You should take care of your sister at home. Dan happily agreed. Anxin touched the little guy's head, praised him, turned around and walked into the kitchen. She found 2 aluminum lunch boxes in the cabinet and filled the 2 little guys with food and vegetables before leaving. She planned to ask Wang Guilan to come over and take a look when she passed by the next door. Unexpectedly, just as she left, Wang Guilan walked over with 2 dishes in her hand. "Shaowen, have you prepared all your meals?" Seeing the aluminum lunch box in Anxin's hand, Wang Guilan was somewhat surprised. She thought that this girl couldn't cook, so she made 2 dishes herself and brought them to Lin Yu. "Well, Aunt Wang, I still want to find you. The 2 children are eating there. Could you please help me take a look?" "No trouble," the Youth League headquarters just left the courtyard and headed east. "There's a sign there." Anxin thanked and rushed over with her lunchbox in the direction suggested by Wang Guilan. Wang Guilan was surprised to see the 3 dishes and 1 soup on the table when she entered the house. This dish was also very good, just in time for the Chinese New Year and holidays. It smelled so delicious, and the 2 children were eating with oil all over their mouths. Compared to the dishes in her hand, she really couldn't handle them. On the way, Anxin met several family members who were delivering meals. Some of them looked at her with curious eyes, and then began to discuss with their sworn companions. Anxin felt the gaze of the people around her, appearing very calm. If they wanted to discuss, they would just discuss, and she didn't mind. She naturally greeted the person she had met in the morning. Along the way, as she walked, she thought about pushing the company to go public, realizing her financial freedom and living a good life. However, over time, she really missed the time when she was a child at her grandparents' house in the countryside. I didn't expect this time traveling, it really made her experience it again. No matter what may happen in the future, she is prepared to face it at this moment, and she wants to live better than before. At this moment, a group of people walked out of the meeting room of the Youth League headquarters, and Lin Yu stood out. I had just taken a few steps and hadn't arrived at the commander's office yet. From a distance, I saw a figure standing at the door, holding a meal in his hand. Dr. Zhu, bring food to Captain Lin again. People passing by greeted Zhu Yan one after another. It's not a secret that Zhu Yan likes Lin Yu, as everyone has been stationed for so long. Lin Yu walked over and looked at Zhu Yan, frowning. Zhu Yan walked up with her lunchbox and said, Captain Lin, I mentioned Xiaozhe and Xiaozhua last night. They promised me to go home and stay today. Don't be angry. Lin Yu nodded and said, could you please? Zhu Yan smiled and said, let's go eat. Dr. Zhu. Lin Yu wanted to say that she wouldn't have to bring food to her in the future, but before she could finish speaking, she heard many people around her stop and look outside the door. He instinctively turned his head and saw a figure holding a lunchbox at the entrance of the Youth League headquarters. She is wearing a gray coat today, with a warm white dress underneath. The hem of the dress is just up to her ankles, and she is wearing a pair of exquisite black leather shoes with a big red scarf around her feet. Her small face is flushed. It seemed a bit out of place with the women rushing to deliver food from behind. Lin Yu was completely frozen there, he didn't expect An Yen to bring him food. An Yen knows about Zhu Yan's delivery of food, but at this moment, I really bumped into something dog blood. Lin Yu walked up quickly, his voice still so low, why did you come? The people around were stunned when they heard these words. Is this girl here to find Captain Lin? What is their relationship? Seeing the lunchbox in her hand again, it's unlikely that it was also for Captain Lin to carry food. Glancing at Zhu Yan's ugly face standing at the office door again, the big guy seemed to guess. An Yen raised her eyebrows and glanced meaningfully at Zhu Yan not far away, her voice carrying a hint of resentment. What's wrong? Can't I come? Or should I bother you? You know I didn't mean that. Lin Yu's voice remained the same, unable to detect any emotion in him, let alone ask him to explain anything. What do you mean? An Yen clearly didn't intend to let Lin Yu go, and took a small step forward. The faint fragrance entered her nose, causing a hint of panic in the heart of this resolute man. Under the gaze of everyone, he grabbed her hand and said, enter the office. Chapter 8, The Old Man's Past. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The office is shared by 3 people, and when Lin Yu took An Yen in, he instantly caught the attention of the other 2. Captain Lin, is this? One of them couldn't help but ask. Lin Yu glanced at him and introduced, this is the 3 battalions of the Yangtze River, and that is the commander of the 2nd Battalion, Lu Haiyang. An Yen nodded at the 2 and said, hello, 2 battalion commanders. My name is An Yen and I am the object of Captain Lin. Object? The 2 of them were surprised and looked at Zhu Yan at the door at the same time. Now there is a play to watch. Lin Yu pulled a stool for An Yen to sit down, while he walked to the door and looked at Zhu Yan with an unpleasant expression. Dr. Zhu, please take today's meal with you. I won't trouble you to bring it over in the future, he said. Zhu Yan's eyes turned red, and tears couldn't stop flowing down. She stuffed the lunchbox in her hand into Lin Yu's arms, turned around, and ran out. An Yen secretly glanced at Lin Yu. Unexpectedly, she was caught by Lin Yu who had turned around. She quickly averted her gaze and tried to appear less guilty. The scene appeared somewhat awkward. Xiao Lin, this is your mistake. You didn't tell us earlier when your partner came. Yeah, we can also help our younger siblings clean up the dust. Lin Yu is the youngest and most promising among the 3. Lin Yu spoke calmly and said, I just arrived yesterday and haven't had a chance to talk to everyone yet. I will tell everyone when we get married. His original intention was to say it after confirming their relationship. The wedding has not been arranged yet. Xia Cuicui was surprised and said, Xiaolin, this is your fault. The little girl came all the way to find you. You need to hurry up. Captain Jiang, don't blame Captain Lin. Don't worry, please all come home and have a drink at your wedding. And Lin Yu looked at Anxin and didn't know what the girl was thinking. She suddenly came to deliver food today and even said in front of everyone that she was his partner, which cut off her future. Okay, we will definitely come to congratulate you with a gift. Captain Lin, I'll go back first. Nuanyuan is still at home. Anxin didn't want Lin Yu to feel uncomfortable and also considered her child at home. She put down her lunchbox and stood up to say goodbye. I'll take you out. At the entrance, Lin Yu Kai spoke again, Anxin, you didn't need to say anything earlier. We agreed for half a month. Announcing it in half a month is no different from announcing it now, and it also saves you a lot of misunderstandings. Anxin looked up and smiled slightly. It's very sweet. Lin Yu sighed and said, today's lunch, you worked hard. And those two kids said they would go back after school today. Anxin pretended to be angry and said, if you don't work hard on me, do you want to work hard on others? Oh, like Dr. Zhu. Her words made Lin Yu look embarrassed, but when she tried to explain, she saw that she had already turned around and walked several meters away. When I returned to the office, there were a few more people, including several company leaders from his camp. When I saw Lin Yu coming back, I gathered around him and said, Captain, you're hiding deep enough. Yes, Captain, I follow you every day and never notice. Go away. Who told you? Is there nothing else to do? If there's nothing else, go run a few laps on the playground. Lin Yu cursed coldly. Several people knew Lin Yu well and knew he wouldn't get angry, so they smiled and walked out of the office. Xia Cuicui approached with his lunchbox in his hand and said, Xiaolin, what delicious food can my younger siblings make for you? When she entered the door, I smelled the meat, and the aroma reminded me of the dishes I ate at a big restaurant when I went to the capital before. Lin Yu ignored Xia Cuicui and sat on the bench where Anxin had just sat. He was also curious about what dishes Anxin had prepared for him. The noodles Anxin made yesterday were already stunning to him, and the dish must have tasted even better. He opened the lunchbox and saw that it was packed full and almost overflowing. There are 3 dishes in total, including shredded potatoes, a scrambled egg, and 5 pieces of steaming braised pork belly. The color and smell of these dishes make people feel restless. Lao Lu, come here quickly. There is braised pork belly and Xiaolin. I know you are not stingy. You can only eat 1 piece each. Lin Yu looked at the chopsticks that came over and immediately closed the lunchbox. I want to eat them and have my sister-in-law make them for you. This is what my partner gave me to eat, he said. Hey, when did you protect your food so much, kid? Xia Cuicui looked at Lin Yu's stingy appearance and cursed with a smile. Anxin didn't know what happened in the office later, so she ran all the way home. When she got home, the 2 little ones had already finished their meals, but they were not at home now. The kitchen had already been cleaned up. I thought I should have gone to Wang Guilan's house, and she also had time to sit down and have a good meal. When we went to Wang Guilan's house again, the 2 little ones were already asleep. Aunt Wang, could you please? It's okay, it's not at all troublesome. Dan had a meal of meat at your house today and kept praising it for being delicious. I'm just helping you keep an eye on the child. After chatting for a while, Anxin thought of something and asked, Aunt Wang, is Lin Yu very popular among girls in the army? Wang Guilan paused for a moment and said, Xiaowen, don't listen to those people talking nonsense. Anxin paused and said, no one said. When I brought my meal over just now, I happened to run into Dr. Zhu. I was curious. He's 30 years old and still a battalion commander. In theory, there should be quite a few introductions, right? Well, actually, over time you will also know. And Yan's heart tightened when she saw Wang Guilan's meaningful expression, wondering if there was any secret left for Lin Yu. In fact, Captain Lin had actually been introduced to him before, and their relationship was quite good. I heard they were both preparing to apply for marriage. It was only later that I realized that the woman was a bad guy. Oh. What's wrong? And Yan moved the stool, and as she thought, the man indeed had a story. You also know that Captain Lin has 3 children, but none of them are biological. That woman used to say that she wanted to take good care of her 3 children. Captain Lin was already busy, so he handed over all 3 children to her. Who would have thought that this woman abused the children and would hit them if she did something wrong? That would be hitting her to the death. However, that woman is also clever and specialized in spanking the buttocks. She even warned the 3 children not to say anything and would kill them if she said so. Later on, Captain Lin occasionally discovered a wound on the child's buttocks. If it weren't for someone blocking her at the time, he probably could have chopped off that woman. Later on, he never looked for a partner again, and whoever introduced him had to be anxious with that person. What about Dr. Zhu? Isn't she very good at taking care of children? Those 2 kids were angry with me last night and ran to her house. Why wasn't Lin Yu with her? Chapter 9, Dr. Zhu's Family Tradition. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. I heard that Dr. Zhu's family disagrees with this. Dr. Zhu's family doesn't agree? Yes, Dr. Zhu's father is the commander of the military district, and her mother is also from the army. Look at Captain Lin, who is from the countryside and also has 3 children. How could he possibly agree to this matter? Wang Guilan said with a hint of embarrassment, Shaoan, I'm not saying that Captain Lin is not a good person. And Yan was a bit surprised. She didn't expect Zhu Yan to have such a big background, but her previous doubts were resolved. Aunt Wang, I know you didn't mean that. I'm not angry. Seeing that An Yan was not angry, Wang Guilan breathed a sigh of relief and continued, Hey, these 3 children are also unfortunate. They have lost their parents at such a young age. Fortunately, there is Uncle Lin Yu around. Shaoan, it's not that Aunt Wang is talkative. It's definitely right for you to marry Captain Lin. As long as you treat your 3 children well, he will also treat you well. And Yan could hear what she meant, but these words still gave her a sense of moral kidnapping. She was not the kind of person who traded kindness to the 3 children for kindness from Lin Yu. This kind of marriage is not what she wants, and it won't last long either. However, she nodded and said, Aunt Wang, don't worry, I will definitely be good to the 3 children and also to Lin Yu. Seeing Anyan nod, Wang Guilan started chatting with her about something else. Time passed quickly, and without realizing it, Lin Nuanyuan had already woken up from sleep. In the afternoon, the mother and daughter passed the time together by telling stories. During this time, Erden also came to visit the house. Taking advantage of the time, An Yan walked around the house several times and found a large piece of land behind the yard. Many families had already planted vegetables and others had set up sheep pens. Only the Lin Yu family seems a bit out of place. Let's do something in the future. An Yan looked at the ground in front of her and began to plan in her heart. Around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, she estimated that her 2 children's school should also be over, so she went to the kitchen to prepare dinner. There was also some meat for lunch, so she didn't have to worry about other dishes. It was just the main course, so she couldn't eat noodles anymore. Looking at the flour and meat at hand, her mind twitched and she started kneading the flour, preparing to make some buns. 2 little guys saw An Yan kneading dough and asking for help. An Yan had no choice but to grab 2 small dough balls for the 2 little ones to play with, which finally calmed down a bit. She was busy in the kitchen, wiping her sweat and turning around, only to see a boy standing at the door at some point, staring straight at her. Anxin was so scared that all the chopsticks in her hand fell to the ground. How could this little guy walk without making a sound? Xiaozhe, you're back, where's your brother? Lin Hongzhi didn't speak, just stared at her for a while, then turned around and went to his room. This kid is so small, why are his eyes so scary? He scared me to death. Anxin calmed her soul and started making steamed buns again. She put a lot of meat filling, and each bun was bulging. After steaming, with a gentle squeeze, the meat juice could emerge from the folds. In the room, Lin Hongzhi also came back. He looked at Lin Hongzhi sitting across from him and said, "Brother, why don't you tell me what to do? Do you really plan to have that woman in the kitchen become our stepmother?" Wait. Wait. Wait for what? Dad said it's half a month, Lin Hongzhi said with great reluctance, unwilling to say another word. Among the 3 children, he was the oldest and also the hardest hit. When his parents had an accident that year, he also went with them. He used to like to laugh like his younger brother, but he never laughed again after that time. Half a month? Brother, do you still remember how that woman treated us before? If she dares to hit you and your sister, I will make her regret it. Lin Hongzhi's eyes flashed with a murderous intent at this moment. Knock and knock. The 2 of them were talking, and the door of the room was knocked on. Anxin's gentle voice came from outside the door, "Xiaozhe, Xiaozhe, come out to eat." The 2 brothers exchanged a glance and got up and walked out the door. Anxin could feel the unkindness in the eyes of the 2 little ones, especially Lin Hongzhi, who was cold, very cold, even more terrifying than Lin Yu's eyes. She smiled and wanted to ease the relationship with the 2 of them. "I don't know what you like to eat, so I just casually made some. You should eat a little, and if it's not to your taste, just tell me." At the dining table, Lin Nuanyuan had already started eating half the face-sized meat buns, her mouth full of oil. "Brother, eat," she said. The 2 brothers only softened a little when they heard their sister's words. One person sat beside Lin Nuanyuan, looking at the posture of protecting Lin Nuanyuan. Anxin found it funny and didn't say anything. It's only natural for her brother to hurt her sister. "You guys are eating, there are still 2 dishes in the kitchen. I'll go and bring them over." Originally inside the room, Lin Hongzhi even said that he would definitely not eat the food cooked by this woman. He could only smell the fragrance of the steamed buns in Nuanyuan's hand and couldn't help but swallow his saliva. "Brother, let's eat. Children are always children." When Lin Hongzhi heard his elder brother speak, he picked up a bun and took a big bite. The smell conquered the little one directly. "Brother, it's so delicious." Lin Hongzhi didn't say anything, but Anxin, who came here with the dishes, heard, "Just eat more when it's delicious. There's still something in the kitchen, enough of it, try. Braised pork belly cooked by my aunt." "Humph." Lin Hongzhi looked away, but his eyes were fixed on the plate of braised pork belly. "I know you 2 don't like me, but don't affect your liking for braised pork belly." "It's delicious," said Anxin, picking up a piece of meat and eating it. "I just don't want to waste food." The little guy had a hard mouth, but his hand movements didn't stop, he took several bites in a row. "Xiaozhe, do you have time? Auntie has something to talk to you about." After dinner, Anxin called out to Lin Hongzhi. "Brother, don't go." Lin Hongzhi called out to Lin Hongzhi. "It's okay. In the yard." "Xiaozhe, I know I appeared suddenly and you weren't ready, but I definitely wouldn't hit you like that woman did before." Anxin was very sincere. "If you don't want to call me mom in the future, you can call me aunt, or follow Nuanyuan and call me sister." Lin Hongzhi gave her a deep glance and said, shouting, "Auntie. Isn't that a generation younger than Nuanyuan?" "Anxin. It doesn't matter whether you treat me well or not, but if you treat my sister and brother badly, even if I can't beat you, I will still fight with you." Anxin felt the murderous aura in his eyes and couldn't help but shudder. This little guy is really ruthless. I swear. After chatting, tidying up the kitchen, and coaxing Lin Nuanyuan to sleep, Anxin collapsed on the bed. It was not easy to be a mother, and even harder to be a stepmother. Forget it, take a shower. She returned to Lin Yu's room, found her clothes, and was about to change into pajamas and take a shower when the door was opened again. Chapter 10, He and She Always Forget. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Anxin was really startled, but when she saw the person's appearance clearly, the scream got stuck in her throat. Lin Yu was stunned for a moment, then quickly closed the door. You can lock the door inside the room, he said. Anxin. She blushed and put on her pajamas as she walked out. She saw Lin Yu with his back to her. I see you haven't come back, I want to take a shower. Looking up and down at Lin Yu, she noticed that the man's back was also very attractive. Anxin unconsciously swallowed her saliva, but before she could fully recover, Lin Yu had already turned his head and her gaze fell on the man's face. Lin Yu noticed that the inexplicable expression in her eyes became somewhat unnatural. I should say I'm sorry, I was too reckless. Anxin quickly withdrew her gaze, and the redness on her cheeks deepened a little. You don't have to say sorry, you already said it last time, but I didn't remember, she said. Then I'll go change clothes first. Lin Yu didn't bother with Anxin anymore about whose problem today was. He politely nodded at her and walked into the room without looking at her. Seeing him close the door, Anxin breathed a sigh of relief and walked towards the kitchen. Lin Yu entered the room and was shocked by everything in front of him. It was just a day's room, no longer so monotonous, as if it had vitality, making people feel a little happier looking at it. Don't worry, Lin Yu also knows it's Anxin's masterpiece. When he changed his clothes and went out, he heard the sound of stir-frying in the kitchen. At this moment, he went to the next door to take a look at the 3 children. The 2 children were buried in their homework, and the youngest daughter was already asleep. He gently pushed open the door, bent down to look at Lin Nuanyuan on the bed, tidied up her scattered hair on the forehead, and lowered his head to kiss her. The little one moved his body and hugged the plush rabbit in his hand tighter, afraid of being taken by others. At some point, the Lin Hongzhi brothers ran to the door and said, Dad. Shoo. After being reborn and covering his daughter with a blanket, Lin Yu walked out and asked calmly, Are you two willing to come back? Although Lin Yu's face is handsome and enduring, coupled with his temperament, it inexplicably gives people a sense of majesty, and a hint of awe and fear inevitably rises in his heart. Dad said half a month, and I told my younger brother to give her half a month. If she treats her sister and younger brother well within half a month, then I won't dare to drive her away anymore. Lin Hongzhi gritted his head and looked up at him. Lin Yu didn't teach Lin Hongzhi a lesson. His eagle-like eyes stared at him for a while, until Anxin came out of the kitchen carrying food and interrupted the strong gaze between the father and son. Captain Lin, the food is hot now. You can have some food first. Lin Yu withdrew his gaze from Lin Hongzhi and turned to look at Anxin, who was wearing an apron. He nodded slightly and walked over, Thank you for your hard work. Anxin shook her head and said, Xiaozha, Aunt has steamed eggs for you. Come and eat them quickly. When all 3 children were growing up, Anxin noticed that Lin Hongzhi would intentionally or unintentionally glance at them while feeding warm egg custard at night. Lin Yu, who had just sat down, turned his head and glanced at the 2 brothers. Without saying a word, the 2 brothers lost their stubbornness at dinner and sat down to eat. Anxin also sat down, her eyes fixed on the 3 of them. Lin Yu ate at a fast pace, like in a war. Lin Hongzhi and he quickly finished the egg custard in their bowl, but the cool Lin Hongzhi ate very politely. Watching the food being destroyed by the 3 of them, Anxin felt a burst of joy in her heart. No one didn't like to see what she had made eaten clean and tidy. Captain Lin, are you full? If you're not full, I'll make you some more. I'm very full. Did you used to cook for yourself at home? Occasionally. Anxin saw that all 3 of them had put down their chopsticks and got up to tidy up the dishes on the table. occasionally. That's because cooking is very talented and delicious. Lin Yu's face remained calm, staring at Anxin without blinking. The two brothers looked at him with some surprise, and it was not easy to get Lin Yu's affirmation. Didn't the three children cause any trouble? No, all three of them are very well behaved, easy to take care of, and not a bit troublesome. Anxin didn't want to hide anything, it was really easy to take care of. The two boys went to school during the day, and when they came back at night, except for having hostility towards themselves, she really didn't have to worry about anything else. As for Lin Nuanyuan, she didn't need to say anything. She liked her and was also obedient. As for cooking, she has no complaints. In the past, when she had time to rest, she would study some delicious dishes. In order to ensure the health of the ingredients, she even rented a vegetable plot on her own. Thinking of the vegetable field, her mind also thought of the piece of land behind the yard. Captain Lin. Call me by name. Anxin hesitated for a moment before saying, Lin Yu, is the piece of land behind our yard ours? Lin Yu nodded and said, I guess so, but if you want to use it, you still need to go and talk to the team. I'll go and ask you about the specifics tomorrow. Okay. Anxin felt a sense of joy in her heart. She was already a person who couldn't take her time off. She had a huge sum of over 700 yuan on her body, but no matter how much it was, there would still be a day spent. Of course, she needed to find something to do. If she could make money along the way, it would be even better. The next morning, Lin Yu and his two brothers left the door, while Anxin and Lin Nuanyuan also relaxed at home. She remembered the clothes Lin Yu and her child had changed yesterday, holding an enamel basin in one hand and Lin Nuanyuan in the other. She asked a woman and found out where everyone usually washes clothes. After walking to the east of the family courtyard for less than 5 minutes, I saw a small river flowing down from the mountain. At this moment, several women were already squatting by the river doing laundry, and she saw a familiar silhouette. Aunt Wang, Anxin walked over with a basin in her hand. Shaoan. Are you also here to do the laundry? Well, yesterday Lin Yu and his team changed into clothes, and I came over when I had nothing to do. Anxin saw Dan stacking stones not far away and said, warm up, go play with Dan. Aunt, wash out the clothes. The water in the small river is the snow water on the mountain, very cold. Anxin is still a bit uncomfortable with this touch. Cold, look at your delicate fingers. I don't usually do these things. Anxin awkwardly smiled and realized that she didn't actually do laundry. She just handed everything over to the washing machine. Follow me to learn. Wang Guilan saw that Anxin didn't know how to wash it, so she asked her to see how to do it first. Anxin watched as Wang Guilan smeared soap powder on her clothes, rubbed them a few times, picked up a stick at her hand, and began to beat it. Without experiencing these things, she became curious for a moment. It turns out that washing clothes can still be done this way,